that I will uphold, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana as by law established. So I will not directly or indirectly communicate or reveal to any person any matter which shall be brought under my consideration, except as may be required for the discharge of my official duties. And I congratulate the Oversight Minister and members of the newly constituted Governing Board of the Ghana AIDS Commission on their appointment. Since coming into office in January 2017, Ghana has made tremendous progress in her response in the fight against HIV. New infections and AIDS-related deaths have fallen by 14% and 19% respectively between 2016 and 2020. This was the direct result of the scaling up of testing and antiretroviral treatment services using differentiated service delivery models throughout the country. Again, within the same period, the uptake of HIV testing increased by 80%, whilst the number of HIV-positive pregnant mothers receiving antiretroviral therapy to prevent mother-to-child transmission increased by 159%. Similarly, the number of persons living with HIV and receiving antiretroviral therapy increased by nearly 100% during the same period. Significant progress has been made in the area of data system strengthening, which has enhanced data capture and data use in health facilities across the country. These positive developments place us in a much stronger position to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals target of ending AIDS by 2030. Our work, however, is far from done. HIV remains a major public health concern, and AIDS is one of the leading causes of death in Ghana, with an average of 21,000 deaths annually over the last 5 years. With more than 245,000 of the estimated 346,000 persons living with HIV on antiretroviral treatment, we should not be seeing such significant numbers of new infections and AIDS-related deaths. Currently, under the Treat All policy, clients are initiated on antiretroviral treatment within 7 days of diagnosis, using standard models of care and patient-centered approach that assures improved linkage to care and retention in care. Yet, clients on life-saving antiretroviral treatment switch to herbal or spiritual substitutes in response to false claims of cure. Discontinuation of antiretroviral treatment often results in increased viral load and eventually death. Newly appointed members of the board, I am hopeful that you will use your experience and technical expertise to halt this unfortunate development by strengthening the Back to Care campaign which the Commission has embarked upon. On addressing the issue of inadequate laboratory equipment and supplies in health facilities, I have been informed that the Global Fund is procuring additional numbers of GeneXpert machines to mitigate this challenge. As a matter of urgency, these machines must be installed as soon as they become available to improve patient monitoring and early infant diagnosis. The National HIV/AIDS Program has shown remarkable resilience in the face of COVID-19 in the last 2 years. However, the country has not been spared its devastating impact. COVID-19 disrupted HIV testing, prevention and treatment services in Ghana and continues to pose a significant threat to persons living with HIV, as it is a common knowledge that HIV infection can lead to severe COVID disease or even death. With COVID still present, we face a serious challenge in ending AIDS by 2030 because it has the potential to reverse the gains in HIV response. We cannot afford to see the significant gains achieved in the HIV and AIDS response reversed. Ending AIDS and achieving HIV epidemic control requires sustained efforts and investments in HIV prevention, treatment and care services, as well as building resilient health and community systems. I'm fully aware of underfunding of HIV programs, with donor expectation that government must fill the funding gap of more than 60% of the estimated cost of the National HIV and AIDS Strategic Plan 2021 to 2025. Specifically, government is required to provide funding to meet the cost of rapid diagnostic tests, kits, reagents, and other laboratory supplies, antiretroviral medicines to treat some 225,000 persons, and provision of condoms. Costs of prevention services for the general population, coordination and management of the national response must equally be borne by government. Distinguished members of the board, government is fully committed to increasing domestic resources to meet these demands through the National HIV and AIDS Fund. This fund will not only ensure adequate domestic resources for the HIV and AIDS response, but will also make the national response financially self-reliant on a sustainable basis. Since the Ghana AIDS Commission Act 2016 did not provide any dedicated sources of revenue for the fund, the previous governing board identified additional sources of funds that can be used to ensure continuous inflow of revenue into the fund. The governing board was of the conviction that HIV financing should be a shared responsibility, and therefore industries whose activities create conditions for the spread of HIV should share the burden of funding. I urge this board to work with the Minister for Finance to prepare and submit the necessary documentation for cabinet consideration. This is the 20th anniversary of the Ghana AIDS Commission. However, its full integration into the public service is hampered by the lack of a scheme of service. The good news is that the management team of the Commission has developed one for approval by the Public Services Commission. It is my expectation that you will give the scheme of service your kind consideration when it comes before you to enable the Secretariat obtain the necessary authorization to migrate existing staff into appropriate grades and to fully operationalize the Commission's national and regional structures for effective delivery of its mandate. Before I conclude, let me remind you that the Commission's mandate is principally to prevent and control the HIV and AIDS epidemic, to promote and protect the rights of persons living with HIV, and to provide for related purposes. The goal must guide the decisions and actions of the governing board at all times. I must also draw your attention to the fact that this current decade is aimed at ending AIDS and achieving HIV epidemic control as enshrined in the SDGs. The Commission has domesticated the HIV and AIDS-related SDGs in the National HIV and AIDS Strategic Plan of 2021 to 2025. Ending AIDS and achieving epidemic control are the goals of the National HIV and AIDS Strategic Plan. And these goals are to be achieved by reaching the 95-95-95 fast-track testing and treatment targets, which requires that by 2025, 95% of all persons living with HIV in the country must be diagnosed, 95% of the people diagnosed must be placed on antiretroviral treatment, and 95% of people on antiretroviral treatment must be virally suppressed. The National Strategic Plan seeks to reduce new infections and AIDS deaths by 85%, as well as eliminate mother-to-child transmission. The strategy ensures that prevention, testing, and treatment are given a comprehensive package through standard models of differentiated services to ensure that groups, communities, and individuals receive tailor-made services that meet their specific needs. The strategy also seeks to achieve transformative results with demonstrable speed, urgency, and intensity of implementation. I charge the governing board to keep its focus on achieving these goals of the strategic plan. Once again, I congratulate you on your appointment to the governing board, and I wish you a successful tenure. May God bless the Ghana AIDS Commission and us all, and may God bless our homeland Ghana and make her great and strong. I thank you for your attention. Congratulations.
I will be very, very brief. We have a charge to do. This virus, medically speaking, is relatively new, but it has permeated all facets of society. That is why everybody that reflects the society is representing a segment of our society. And on the personal score, I'm very happy that when this epidemic reared its head in Africa, and for that matter, Ghana, ours was, practically speaking, in the 90s. I was then a young doctor in Bibiani, and I was recruited by Dr. Phyllis Entry to lead a team to Nairobi to make projections about how the HIV/AIDS was going to break in the Ghanaian scene. I must confess that all the projections gave me, in fact, I went almost into frank depression because the projections were so frightening at that time. If you Google, you will get a damn proj. That time, fortunately for us, we did not pass through that kind of curve. It was attenuated, and the history or the trajectory of the epidemic wasn't too bad as we had predicted. Suffice to say, it was due to our collective effort that we had that outcome. Because if my memory serves me right, Ghana was the only country in the global south that took a loan to fight HIV/AIDS. At that time, $25 million was a huge sum of money in the 90s, or in the early 20s, when that's 2001, when President Kufuor's government took a loan to fight this menace. Fortunately, we've come a long way and we have a handle on it. But as a public health person, and realize that when you have a disease which incidence is even counted in 1 in the hundreds, it's still not acceptable. For epidemics, you must be counting at the very worst case 1 in thousands or 1 in 10,000. So we have a lot of work to do, Your Excellency. That is why I'm happy to accept this position, and with the help of my colleagues, I know that we shall succeed. We have done some before. We have eradicated smallpox. We've defeated measles, polio, and significantly, all of them were viral diseases. Now we are dealing with COVID. Thankfully, COVID, we shall see its end. But here with HIV/AIDS, because of its mode of transmission, the social content is very, very important. As for the medical thing, we have a handle on it. Because the arsenals that are left to us, it is like we've reduced it to a chronic disease with very, very, the life quality of life is fairly okay. But we must work. The Commission, Mr. Vice President, we pledge that we will work to suppress new infections. And then all the tools and arsenals that have been discovered by medicine, together with the Ministry of Health, we shall apply them so that the last vestiges of HIV/AIDS, we conquer them, so that in tandem we have an eye on the Millennium Challenge goals that have been MDGs that have been set for us. That's the goal is 2030. We shall prevail. Mr. Vice President, but before I take my seat, let me say that there are a lot of housekeeping issues to keep. We shall be coming to you. But suffice to say that funding is a big problem. Ghanaians have used to have an even government, I dare say I'm in government, but I would dare say that because we are used to HIV/AIDS, we think that it does not pose a problem. Look at the figures. When Mr. Vice President, you read about 21,000 people die annually. Imagine about 400 STC or VIP buses plunging into a ravine or a river, the Volta Lake, so to speak, and dying per annum. That's how many people. And they are some of the most productive segments of our society. That is why we must invest in that area and not relent. After acquiring all this knowledge, if we allow that kind of those people to have early deaths, even from the economic models, we will not have done good to our society. Mr. Vice President, there are a lot to say, but suffice to say that I will be coming to you as chairperson so that we remind government that you give us the funding. But it doesn't mean that you should come for central government. It is not lost on me that those segments of society or the economy whose activities and gender transmission of HIV/AIDS have been left off the hook. I'm being specific. Those in the mining industry, because the red hot zones, the hotspots of HIV/AIDS is related to the mining communities. Unless maybe in the last few years where I haven't said the epidemiology has changed. So they must we must take money from them to invest. Apart from the pneumoconiosis and the dust and whatnot that they throw, which cause other diseases, HIV/AIDS is a social problem, and among other things like alcoholism and all, chronic poisoning and all that, their activities endanger HIV/AIDS, so we must take money from them. And then, of course, the hospitality industry and activities that relate to tourism. We should also look at that place and also take money from them so that we will invest in the human capital that is so much depend on. Housekeeping issues, the end game, if we want to achieve it, then it means we must have bridge the funding gap. And particularly, we have problem. I'm just talking to the director We have post-clearance problems at the port clearance issues. In regard to tax clearance, and then, like we said, the scheme of service, to facilitate the process we would facilitate the process for approval. So we'll be coming to you, to Cabinet, maybe, but we'll look at it, and then in due course we'll come to you. So, Your Excellency, these are a few remarks that I can make. On behalf of my colleagues, we thank you very much for the honor that has been reposed in us, and we pledge solemnly that we will discharge our mandate for the good of this country and for humanity. Thank you very much.